This is the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show. Real stories, real success in Twin Cities real estate. Join your hosts, Adam Tafel and Tim Swierczek, as they dive into the world of Twin Cities real estate investing. Together, they share valuable insights and practical tips to help both new and seasoned investors navigate the Minneapolis-St. Paul market. With a focus on relatable stories from real people, this show will empower you with the knowledge and confidence to thrive in your investing journey. Guys, take it from here.
What's going on, Tim?
Hey, man. How you doing, buddy?
We got Dumi Thomsen today.
Yeah. I did not know Dumi before this podcast. So for me, that was really interesting to get to know him. And I guess my takeaway, and I don't know if this is my only takeaway, but what first thing that comes to mind is he was a doer and he learned, right? He bought some properties. He didn't know everything about every property, but he still took action. There are very few things that are not overcomable. You know, there are some, don't get me wrong, and you need good advice and everything else, but like little things come up and you just got to tackle them and move on.
Yeah, and what really, maybe this doesn't come across on this episode, because what I really wanted was Dumi and his wife here together, but they own a business, they're so busy, they have 3 kids, getting a couple here in the middle of the workday to Highland Park is not the easiest thing in the world. So we're grateful, and we're actually going to have Kaylee on the podcast because she'll have a totally different perspective on everything.
Sure.
But I think it's really a story of a family doing this together. You know, they had kids for a handful of these deals. They were very aligned in their vision. We want to build generational wealth, and we're going to have to move every year to do it. And that's what they did. And it certainly wasn't without its challenges. But Dumi is just a really organized, professional, great guy to work with, and he has gone far in life, and I'm sure he's going to go a lot further. I'm excited to see what he does in real estate. You know, I feel like this is just the beginning of his story. So
Sweet.
Here's Dumi. Welcome to the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show, brought to you by Shook. Shook is the all-in-one platform to help you manage your rentals, built for real estate investors just like us. Shook has maintenance and expense tracking. How organized are you really when it comes to your rental property? Do you really know your true income? If you use a program like Shook, they have tenant-generated maintenance tickets. They have an IRS-aligned expense tracker. It's really a game changer if you need some help getting organized. So I think at just $5 per unit per month, it's totally worth checking out shookrentals.com. Book a live demo in the show notes. We are offering a 20% discount code, TCREI20. Thanks to Shook for sponsoring. Now on to the main episode. One of the hardest parts of being a real estate investor is finding a decent property manager. Much easier said than done. I worked a 10-unit transaction earlier this year, kind of a complex deal, and John and the team at RPM Viking handled the management for our out-of-state mutual client. And I gotta tell you, these guys are professional, responsive, delivered exactly as promised, which is pretty unique in their industry by my experience. They are now my #1 property management referral, and I'm proud to have them sponsoring the show. Thank you to John and the team at RPM Viking. Check them out at rpmviking.com. Investors, if a deal gets messy, call Network Title. They can handle the BRRRR, the 1031, mixed use, commercial, whatever it takes so you can close on time. Mentor of mine, guy who I really respect, Kirk Duckwall, says working with Network Title is kind of like having another personal assistant. That's how on the ball these people are. Network Title, complex deals made simple. Link in the show notes.
You said you're not going to put the contract ready in there? Oh, you searched it somehow.
It won't show up in the way that I'm searching. But what's up, Dumi? We're rolling, dude. Thanks for being here.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Dumi's been a hard get. I've been swinging to get the Thompsons in here ever since we started the podcast.
All right.
You guys are naturally one of the first clients I would ask because we've done a lot of deals together, and you guys are just like personable. You got a great story. You're smart. So thank you for finally making time. You have 4 kids, and somehow you drove to Highland Park to talk to people for an hour.
3 kids, maybe 4.
3 kids,
point,
whatever, man.
3 for now. Sometimes it feels like 4.
But yeah, man, what's going on? What are you up to today other than recording a podcast?
Actually running around to some of my properties. I've got a couple showings. Did a showing earlier today, and then I've got 2 this afternoon. So staying busy on that front. Trying to get a unit filled right now in Plymouth. So if you know of anybody that needs a unit, send them my way.
Yes or no? Vacancy and showing apartments is the worst part of being a landlord. I say yes.
Yeah, I think that it's become that. It wasn't for quite a long time, I would say, prior to COVID, but I'm going to call it a buying pattern because I don't know what else you would call it, but like the active leasing has changed since COVID in terms of when people pull the trigger and how picky they are and stuff like that.
Like, yeah, say more. What have you noticed?
Well, prior to, I mean, for years, I mean, I used to teach a class on this, and I always told people, don't list earlier than, don't start showing the property earlier than 7 weeks, and everyone's going to lease it between 7 and 5 weeks.
Before lease end, do you mean?
Yeah. Yep.
Or lease beginning, rather.
Yeah, from lease beginning, right?
Yeah.
Because if you do it earlier, because I used to, right? I started off showing it 8 weeks or even 9 weeks out, but usually 8 weeks. And I couldn't get a sold. Everyone who saw it was like, I love your place, but I'm going to look at more, right? These were the the early people out. They're always the ones who are like, they're proactive, but they also want more options.
Right.
So if you put it too far out, they weren't ready to pull the trigger. So I figured over time, okay, 7 is I would market it at 8. I wouldn't have a showing until 7. And then those people at 7, some of them would bite, but everyone would bite within 6 weeks because they almost got nervous. Right. And they started pulling the trigger off. Now we see people pulling the trigger like more like 8 weeks out on properties. They pull it a lot further out than they used to. But they also, because there's no rush, I feel like there's a lot more showings. We have a ton more showings than we used to have before someone will pull the trigger. But it's really hard to find someone even 5 weeks out. You've lost a big percentage of the marketplace.
Right.
How have these vacancies been going for you? You want to talk about those? Have they been challenging, or are these like, are you still able to avoid vacancy completely?
I haven't had to show a unit now for probably a year, which has been great. We've had a lot of longer term tenants that have been in for 3-4 years.
Nice.
My experience doing showings, I don't really mind it. I enjoy meeting the people and, getting to know them. And, ultimately I want to find the right fit between the tenant and myself. So, even though I'm doing showings and, you're going to have one person that actually bites on the property, I don't really mind it too much just because I want to make sure that it's a good fit for them. Like if I'm open and honest up front with them as far as like, okay, here's what the neighborhood is like. Here's what your tenants in the building are going to be like. They typically stay around for a longer time. But if I'm a little bit not fully forthcoming with the information and they're not fully aware of what they're getting into, then I find, after a year when they're up for their renewal, then they're like, yeah, I'm actually going to move now. And then that's when you're facing, a vacancy again. So I've found, if I have a month or two of vacancy at the front end and I actually take the time to find the right tenant, that it ends up working out well for everybody. The tenants that are actually moving out of this space have been there for, I think it's 3 years now, and they've been great tenants and they just bought a house. So I find, up front, if you're open and honest with them, they're also open and honest with you. And then I feel like that makes for a good tenant and landlord relationship.
Totally.
Another thing I found as well, I don't know if it's the last couple of years or what it is, but it seems like there's been a trend where people start responding to you right away. They send a tour request like, hey, I want to see the property. Let's get it on the books and schedule it. And a lot of times people don't even show up. And that's the part that bothers me the most because like you mentioned at the beginning, I've got 3 kids that are 5 and under, 5, 3, and 1. And I'm doing a good chunk of the childcare right now. So to, leave the house and spend an hour driving to the property and turning all the lights on and opening everything and showing them the property can be a big chunk out of my day. And then when I'm sitting there and like no one's showing up, that's what makes me upset. But as far as not being able to fill it, I think there's a balance between like being eager to fill it, but then also taking your time to fill it and like making sure that the quality of, person that you're meeting makes sense for you. So,
and to be clear, when I asked that question, I'm not saying I don't personally struggle with vacancy at all. I've had very, very little vacancy struggles, luckily, throughout my landlording career, but it's exactly what you just described. It's the flakiness and all the tire kicking that comes along. And that's what we signed up for. I guess I'm not like complaining. I'm just saying it happens to be my least favorite part of all of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Same. I would agree. I'm curious because I have lots of thoughts on some of the things you said. Can you tell me your process for someone reaches out to you through, to see a place? What do you do? Like, what's your process to schedule a showing?
Sure. So typically, I'll respond to their request, and I have a series of questions that I'll ask them as far as income and credit and those kind of things. And to your point, you want to kind of weed out the tire kickers and make sure it's actually, a viable place for them. Like if they don't meet the income requirement, it's like, I don't know, this isn't probably a good fit for you. Another thing I like to do is I like to put a video in that response to them and say, hey, here's a video of the place. And I try to make it like a nice, widescreen shot, first person view. And I walk them through like, hey, there's, granite countertop, there's a stainless steel sink, here's the fridge, and kind of give them a good walkthrough of the space. And I find that 5 to 10 minute video can actually, it gives the prospective tenant a lot of information up front. And then they can decide, okay, do I need to drive an hour across town? And then it kind of narrows that funnel down to the people who are actually interested.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So I found that to be really helpful. And then just having pictures and layouts up front so people can really understand the space. There's no substitute for actually being in the space in person and, getting a feel for the neighborhood and, the trees and the park nearby and like how it is to actually live in a property. But I do find that the video and quality of pictures really helps as well. And that kind of can narrow that funnel down. So you're not getting tire kickers at the door.
Not that you even mentioned this would be a thing, but one thing I learned is if it can't fit a sectional couch, make sure you mention that. Because you will literally have people there that'll say, well, we love the place, but we can't fit our couch here. So like in your video, I would from now on, if you're doing it, I'd say, this one will fit a sectional, this one won't. Stuff like that, right? Like, and by the way, believe it or not, I've just seen that over and over again, right? So
right.
I've said this on the podcast before, but I'll say it again for the folks at home. 50% of people, maybe 60% are not going to show up. Either they do you the duty of, or either they pay you, either they have the respect to let you know, or they're just going to ghost you and not show up. Usually it's the latter from my experience. So when you're texting them, what I do is I say, hey, I'm so excited to see you on Tuesday at 3 p.m. I need you to send me a text message on Tuesday at 2 p.m. confirming that, yes, you'll be there. And you'd be amazed how many people, I even had a guy who like kind of grumbled about it and then he didn't show up, and then you're not wasting any time. And if they can't follow the direction, just a few times I've had somebody show up, but they didn't text me. And I always make it really clear in the text, I will consider this appointment canceled if I don't get the text. And if the tenant can't follow that like very, very simple instruction, like, do you want them as a tenant? I'm not really sure. You
hit exactly my thing. So in most of business, including Zillow's rental manager, their whole idea is to minimize friction. Like most of business, that's what it is. I think in the rentals, like showing / screening process, you want to increase friction dramatically to weed out tire kickers and people who won't follow simple directions. So I completely agree. We don't make them text us back without a text from us. We do prompt them because my thought is like people will forget, and I don't want to lose out on them. So I typically will we text them prior to just saying, "Are you still coming?" kind of thing, right? Like, hey, showings at like 3:30. Are you still planning on being there? That kind of deal. If you don't text us back, we are not going to show. Yeah. So we do it slightly different only because, like, frankly, Well, our places are not, especially the ones that we have now, are not as hot as the ones you have, and I think are, let's call it a little more dime of the dozen. So they're not, your people are looking for a specific place in a specific neighborhood. There's
Sure.
not a lot of rentals in those neighborhoods. So
And I think that's a really good point that you mentioned, Tim, about the increasing the friction. One thing that I haven't liked about some of the platforms like Zillow or Apartments.com, and I don't know if it's the people who are responding to the listing, is it's very transactional, where there's like literally nothing about them. Like, I want to schedule a tour, and it's like, okay, well, what time, what date, like what works for you? So when someone comes through and they're very open, like, hey, I'm moving into the Twin Cities from Duluth, and here's the times that work for me, and they make it very easy to like work with them. I like that. And a lot of the units that we have, we've house hacked throughout our journey, and I'd say they're on the nicer end of units. And I've personally lived there with my wife and some of my kids, so I have an intimate knowledge of the units. And I think part of working with us is that we've house hacked, so we know who's living in the other unit, and we know the neighborhood, and we know the coffee shops and the places to go to. And I feel like when you establish a relationship with them up front, you can kind of sell them on the benefits of like, hey, maybe it's not the cheapest place, maybe we're on the upper end of the scale, but there is a lot of benefit in working with us because you're working directly with myself or my wife, and I like to think we're pretty fair and reasonable people. We like to use the term firm but fair. So
yeah, that's what I use.
yeah, we're going to have our boundaries and items put in place to protect us, but at the same time, we're going to be very reasonable and friendly and kind. And I feel like if you get that person who's inquiring about the property who seems to have that attitude up front, I'm automatically like, okay, this could be a good fit. Regardless of the numbers, there's also the human side of the interaction as well.
Yeah. We used to get a lot of that. People would ask if we were the landlord. We always said yes. I know a lot of people want to hide that they are, and they say they're the manager. I think it's a poor choice to do that, but we would have had a lot of people say, great, because I don't want to work with a management company. They're sick of the management, because the management company, again, we beat it to death, but they can't care about the tenant or the property because they need to manage 1,000 to make a living.
Right. Right.
So they drop the ball on both sides, right? Or they give subpar service on both sides, and so some people do care about the manager. And if they say that, you're right. As soon as you tell them you're the owner, they're pretty much signing up.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, good, I'm so sick of that. Right. I'd rather deal with you. At least I know, that you care about this one property, right?
Right, exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another thing, so I'm kind of curious. I want to go down this route because I think this is a great topic. First of all, to answer your question, you mentioned you don't know why. So when someone goes on Zillow, if they're interested, they push a button that says schedule a tour, and you get something that says, is this still available? That's all that happens.
Sure.
It's one button, and after they push that button 30 times, they don't remember your property anymore. So that's why that happens. So the people who do separate, it's just like being on Facebook Marketplace, where you can either push a button or you can type in a message. You're getting the people sometimes to type a message, but very infrequently.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's all automated.
So let's pretend someone clicks the schedule a meeting button. What do? Like they say, I want to schedule a meeting. You do what? You kind of mentioned it, but I want to go back through. So you ask them questions back, right?
Yeah. First I thank them for, inquiring, and then I send them a list of questions. I want to say there's like 7 or 8 questions that I have.
Is that automated yet?
It's not automated. I copy and paste it in there.
Do you know how to automate it?
I don't.
Here's a trick. Okay. So what you do is you have to do this through in order to automate it, you have to have the service running if it's Outlook, or just do like Gmail, right? Set up a separate Gmail account that runs through your Zillow, right?
Got it.
And then when someone emails you, they'll have a unique part on Zillow. It'll say, a new tenant wants to tour a property or something. I don't remember what the wording is.
Sure.
You take that part of the subject line that doesn't talk about the property, the part that's going to be on every Zillow lead you get,
right?
And you put that into a filter in Google Gmail, and then from there you have Gmail send out what they call a canned response. Okay, and you write a canned response that says, "Thank you for your inquiry on our property."
Sure.
Before we show it to you, we want to make sure that whatever. I don't know how we want to make sure you can afford it, or whatever you say,
Yep.
and then you list your questions. If they don't answer those questions, you ignore it like the lead never existed.
Okay.
The reason why is because they don't, and my wife says this a lot, they don't even remember sending it to you. They don't care. They moved on. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. They've clicked 100 of them.
Yeah. So if you don't do that, they're living rent free in your head and they have zero intention of ever looking at your place. So you have to filter through all the people who actually are interested in your place. And, and so that should be automated. The problem is, you can't do that on Facebook as far as I know. I'm not aware of because it all goes through Facebook Messenger, and Facebook Messenger killed bots a few years ago. You used to be able to have a bot that would automatically answer, and maybe with AI there's a way to do it, but that's the downside of Facebook.
Yeah, that's a helpful tip. Thanks.
Let's go through your story, man. You've done a handful of deals, a lot of house hacking, and then a couple more creative deals towards the end, toward the last few deals. Could you just give us a brief background about like where'd you grow up? What's your and how did you get to the point where you thought, hey, I think I'm going to give real estate investing a shot?
Sure. So, in getting ready for the podcast and kind of thinking about my history, I realized I started house hacking when I was about 6 months old. So my parents had a duplex in Northeast Minneapolis, still do. It was an up-down duplex built in the 1920s. So my parents did missions work, and I grew up in Africa as a kid for 12 years. So kind of bounced back and forth from, living in Africa and living in the States here in Minnesota. So, my parents had the 2 units, and they lived upstairs in one of the units and then rented out the downstairs. And then when we were in Africa for a few years at a time, then my parents would rent out the upstairs. And they actually purchased it from the neighbors, contract for deed. It was like one parcel, I think, at the time, and it was built by the same builder in the early 1920s. So the layout of the house is almost identical. A lot of the finishes were very similar, like maple floors and really nice classic trim on the house. So I like to joke that I was a house hacker back then. And my dad was in construction, and we were always doing projects at home, doing bathroom remodels and fixing things. And he worked on a carpentry crew, and he was actually the foreman for that crew. So I learned a lot from my dad growing up and just doing projects around the house and all of that. And honestly, I wish I had paid more attention to the wisdom and advice that he had at the time. But looking back on it, I really learned a lot about home maintenance and how houses work from him. And my dad always pushed me to get out of the house and, get a job and get out there and make money. And one of the things I did, I don't remember how old I was. I was probably 16, 17 years old when I came back from Africa. So I was a freshman when I came back from being overseas. So I would have been 16 or 17. And I printed out some flyers offering lawn care service. So I went around probably like a 6-block radius of my house, rode my bike and handed all those flyers out. And there was a guy, his name was JR, and he responded. I think at the time we probably had rotary phones. And he responded and said, hey, I'd love to have you take care of my properties. He was actually doing a house hack at the time at a property in Northeast, but he probably had 4 to 5 duplexes around the Northeast area. So I would go around to the properties and, do the leaf, blowing and raking and the lawn care and the snow removal and everything. And he paid me a flat rate per month. So, some months I would have snow like every single day of the month. And then other times there would literally be no snow, but it was the same amount. And I kind of started to do projects with him. So he was doing a live-in flip at the time. So I'd go over to his house and he would buy me lunch and, pay me $10 an hour cash. And I would do renovation projects for him and sweeping and that kind of stuff. So that was probably my first taste of real estate, was just the kind of the knowledge of my parents in the background that they were, renting out their downstairs unit. So I kind of had a vague idea of what that meant. And I was used to living with other people in the house because we had a shared basement. But I guess my first endeavor was really the lawn care services that I did. I would say I didn't really have like a big like financial background, I would say. But really what got me into investing was, so when I graduated from college, I had about 40 grand of student loan debt. And I had that for a couple of years out of college. And I took the Dave Ramsey course about, it's largely based on having an emergency fund and then paying off the debt and whatnot. So I worked a couple jobs at the time and paid off the 40 grand in a couple years. And at the time, I think I was making 38 grand out of college at my first job. So I got rid of the debt, but then as I progressed in my career, I was making more and more money, but I was still keeping my expenses like I was making 38 grand. But at this point, I had basically doubled my income. And my wife and I were kind of clued into the FIRE movement, or the financial independence, retire early movement. So, we were saving 50% of our income. Like, we were basically living off of one income and then saving the other 40 to 50%. And, so we're maxing out our 401ks and IRAs and HSAs and all the avenues that we had to protect our money. And then we started to hear about real estate. And at the time, it was the Eagles and the Patriots were coming to town for the Super Bowl. And we started to see articles in the Star Tribune and the Pioneer Press about how much money you could make by renting out your place for a lot of the fans that were coming into town. So for about a year prior to the Super Bowl happening, we started to Airbnb our house. So at the time, we lived in a townhouse, and we would Airbnb the house. We'd leave for the weekend. We'd go camping. I remember one time we actually went to a state forest and slept in the back of the car while the guests were in the house, and we're making, like $2,000 for the stay or whatever it was. It probably wasn't that much, but it was a good chunk of money for us to sleep in the back of the car. And, we had a mattress down and sleeping bags and everything. And
this is pre-kids, obviously.
this is pre-kids. Yeah. Yeah. But it was a great trip. We had a lot of fun. It was bitterly cold. It was like, mid-20s or something like that. But
I used to sleep on my porch when I had an Airbnb guest. Similar strategy. Highly recommend, by the way, for young people who want to hustle.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Crash with a buddy. All right, go on.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, it felt really scrappy. And anyway, it was a lot of work always having to turn over the unit. So we'd have to clean everything and put away all our personal belongings and take out all the guest the items we wanted the guests to use, and we'd lock off a section of the house. And so we wanted to get into something a little bit more passive. So we found long-term real estate, and then started to grow from there. And what really sealed the deal was we were married in 2017, and we had a couple from some Eagles fans that stayed with us. And I don't remember if they stayed like 3 or 4 days, but it was something like $2,500 to $3,000 for those few days that they stayed, just because the demand was so high for all the people coming in for the Super Bowl. And at the time, we used credit card hacking or credit card points to go to Costa Rica. We went to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, and that 3 or 4 night stay covered our trip to Costa Rica for our honeymoon. And we're like, okay, this might actually be worthwhile. Let's look into this further. And then that kind of set us on our path to house hacking the properties we have.
It's interesting. Very basically my identical story, except for I didn't own real estate. But yeah, it was getting a taste of Airbnb money and like how simple and easy that was. And then like, oh my gosh, I need more of these. Right?
Right.
I feel like I know you pretty well, but I didn't know that's exactly how you started. So I'd really like to go deal by deal. I know that's not the most exciting thing for you to talk about, but I think for our guests or for our audience, it's one of the most informative things we can do. So let's pull up.
Sure, let's do it.
Are we at 6017 Chicago, the first one, or are we in Northeast for the first one?
So we lived in a townhome at the time, and we kept that townhome. I don't know if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, let's talk about that's Yellowstone.
7200 Kimberly Lane North.
Oh, this isn't in my cart. Interesting. We'll talk about the townhome, and then we'll start with the visuals afterwards.
Sure.
Or wait a minute. Yeah, this is you. Okay, go on. Sorry. Tell me about the townhome deal.
So my wife actually purchased this property out of college in 2012. So at the time, we weren't married, we were living apart. And then I moved in a couple years before we got married. So that was kind of our first real estate endeavor. She rented out one of the units. It was a 2-bed, 1.5 bath property. So she rented out one of the units. And then when I started to live there, we would do the Airbnb on that property. And that was the property that kind of kickstarted everything with the Super Bowl stay, essentially. That property is really nice. It was actually the model unit for the townhome development.
Is it? What city?
Maple Grove.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a nice place.
Yeah, it's a really nice place. It's got vaulted ceilings that are probably 20 feet high. It was kind of the model unit for the townhome development, so it has all the upgrades and it looks really nice in pictures. That one rents for $2,250 right now. It's a really easy property to manage. One thing that I'm looking for a lot of times when I'm looking at a property is how easy it is to, the day-to-day management. We've got some other properties that I'll talk about in the, coming up here that I spend more of my time on those properties compared to this one. Mm-hmm. This property, I get 2 calls a year and they're normally really easy. And it was built in 2007. So everything's, updated, new water heater, new furnace, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really easy to manage, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And so tell us a little bit about the process when you're looking for that first house hack, and maybe you can prep me so I can get ahead of things. What's the address on the first, I guess that is the first house hack, but the first multifamily deal.
Sure.
What's the address on that one?
616 37th Avenue Northeast.
And is that right on the border of Columbia Heights?
I grew up 2 houses off of 37th. What's the
funny.
cross street?
Madison Place and 37th.
Okay, so it's close to the golf course then?
Yep, it's like 2 blocks north of the golf course.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so there's Central on the east and then University on the west.
Yep.
So it's literally smack dab in the middle of the two.
Yeah.
So people blow the stop sign in front of the house all the time because they're up to speed and they're like going 40 miles an hour and they're not used to like.
I think I know where that stop. I think I know where that stop sign is. Yeah. So I grew up on the opposite side of Central from that, about equal distance the other direction of Central, right?
Sure.
So
is that over by Stinson?
About halfway in between Johnson and Central.
Okay, got it.
So not so far over, not quite that far over, but yeah.
Okay.
So for the folks who are listening to this, looks like a turn of the century, 1900 build, 1925 actually. Yep. Interesting. Although the face of it looks like it would be 1900. I wonder if that's even correct. 1925 build, 2-stall garage, 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. Although I don't think that tells the whole story, right? Because there's like a den or sunroom in each unit. Mm-hmm. Is it just the lack of closet that makes us call it a den or a sunroom, or is it French doors into the room?
There aren't French doors. It's basically off the bedrooms, so
it's a pass through.
Yeah,
got it.
Yep, at the back of the house. Because
I've had a lot of success lately. Like I just helped a client of mine who had bought a duplex with me recently, and they were using this leasing agent who couldn't find a good tenant at all, and we helped him find a tenant in like 4 days. And like, if you can call something a bedroom, even if it's a stretch, call it a bedroom.
Because they'll use it as a bedroom anyway, right?
Because they're going to use it as a bedroom. You get more clicks. I'm not saying to mislead people and like bring them to the showing and then like, surprise, it's a pass through. Put it in the description. But not that you're asking for help or that you need help from me leasing. But for anyone listening who thinks they have something non-conforming, just call it a bedroom and see what happens. But going on, 2,400 square feet, 1920s build, been on the market for 56 days. You picked this up for $323. That's a pretty sweet price for a place this solid. What was the transaction like? And of all the places you looked at, we weren't working together yet. Why did you decide on this deal?
So at the time, we were living in Maple Grove, and when I was in the States, I grew up in Northeast. So it was kind of a return to, my old neighborhood, if you will, even though it was a couple miles north. So, we knew we wanted to be in Northeast and had heard a lot about kind of the chatter about, Northeast is like an up and coming place to invest in and live in. Couple things about this property that we liked, it was a couple blocks north of the golf course, and, being outside and having activity was important for us. One thing that we've really prioritized through our house hacking journey is we want to feel comfortable in the space that we're living in. And, if we're comfortable in that space in the future, it's probably going to attract tenants that are looking for those amenities, like being near the golf course, or, they're just going to have more of a similar mindset, to us as well. So a couple things off the top of my head I can remember about the property. One, the woodwork was great. It has maple floors and a lot of the trim. And then it had a lot of potential for property improvements. So, at that property, we've done flooring in the lower level unit. That was a carpet floor initially. And then upstairs, we did a bathroom remodel. And then we've done some painting and just general upkeep of the woodwork.
These are a lot of the things we look for in like a value add deal, and maybe even perhaps an undervalued deal. Like just looking at this listing, the photos are pretty awful. The order that the photos are in, like there's all sorts of photos that are not helping to sell this duplex, and they're right at the forefront of the listing. Right. So 56 days on the market for a place like that, even back in 2018 when you closed on this, it really that far exceeded probably median days on market for a home of this size, price like this. Right. And all sorts of just like cosmetic. Look at there's like a picture in the listing that's just like an awful bedroom with the tenant stuff just piled
underwear
everywhere.
On the floor and beer cans everywhere.
Yeah, like sheets off the mattress. Like you're not helping to sell your clients.
I don't know the answer to this. I'm gonna guess 240, but it's somewhere between 230 and 260 is my guess. But I think 240 is what I would like.
Well, we already said the price, but no, it's 323.
323.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. That was a high price for that time period.
2,400 square feet.
Yeah. So it must have been pretty big. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point, Adam, that you made about the listing photos. Kaylee and I joke, my wife and I joke that our ideal seller to purchase from is like an inherited landlord who's maybe inherited the property, and maybe they're in their 60s or something like that, and the rents are really low, and they've taken the pictures with a Nokia flip phone, because every single property that we've purchased kind of fits that similar demographic. So I think we've been able to identify places where like, hey, the pictures don't look very nice, but it's actually a really nice place once you get there. Yeah. And things as simple as a fresh coat of paint and professional pictures that cost $200 can really affect the rent that you're getting from that property. So, you don't always have to do a big fix and flip to make it worthwhile. I think a lot of times just identifying that like, hey, this property has some, room for a little bit of improvement. Even $1,000 in paint and adding some new light fixtures goes a long way. And especially the photos, that can really drive a lot of traffic to your listing.
For sure.
Any challenges with this one in particular? Or did you learn anything from this first multifamily house hack deal that influenced you going into deal number 2?
Probably tenant management. So initially when we moved in, there was a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, and within a couple weeks of us moving into the property, they were yelling and screaming at each other, and they were going through a breakup, and they were having drunk fights and things like that. So that was a big wake-up call to us initially, and we thought like, oh, okay, this is going to be our investing journey moving forward. And it just put more of the forefront on like, okay, we have to have, a solid lease. Like we need to have a good relationship with the people that we're actually living with. And just being mindful that, okay, we're not only the landlord, but we're actually neighbors as well. And it's a two-way street. Like we want to have a good relationship with you, and you want to have a good relationship with us. So just being a little bit more mindful about that, and like documenting things and making sure that, the leasing is done correctly. Like at the time we had inherited a lease from the previous owner, and we're transferring the lease over to us. So making sure that you're doing your due diligence to, vet the tenant and making sure that they comply with like your criteria after that lease is expired.
Yeah. Were they on a month to month when you bought it, or was that something that you had to wait a while?
I think they were not on a month to month. It was like a couple months. So the lady decided to stay, and then the boyfriend ended up moving out. So
Which sounds like it was good for you, right?
it ended up working out well.
Yeah.
For us, and then someone else moved in. But I think when you're inheriting a tenant, especially when you're house hacking, like I mentioned, it's not just about the numbers. It's about like, hey, I want to make sure that, my wife and I have a good, stable place to live. So it's not always like by the book, if you will, but you need to have a little bit of empathy and understanding. Like, hey, you're coming in as a new person, and you don't just want to be like, okay, your rent was $900, now it's $1,800 overnight, and you don't want to piss them off, and then on the flip side, you don't want them to piss you off too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you definitely don't want to be bull in a china shop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as far as house hacking, that was a big lesson for us to be aware of, that like, okay, when we're moving into the place, there's someone that's been here for, 3 in the next example, they've been there for 15 years. So we are kind of coming into their house, their home. So, we just want to take a little bit more of a mindful approach to how we're investing.
It's good perspective too, because it's like really the bank owns most of this place. You happen to do some arbitrage
We're renting from the bank
here, but you're renting from the bank. They're renting from you. We're all just nobody's better than anyone. Yeah. Okay, so you go into round 2, which is when you end up buying the Diamond Lake place, correct? I've been like wrong with every guess.
That's my favorite property.
So, and this is your favorite property. So, 60-70. Well, I'll cut that if you don't want the address. It's this 6,000 block of Chicago Avenue, and it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Again,
so, South Minneapolis, obviously.
Southern Minneapolis, Diamond Lake. Yep, kind of towards Nokomis-ish. 2,300 square feet, mid-century, 1965, up down. Again, 89 days on the market in 2020, when duplexes were selling quickly, especially mid-centuries were selling quickly. Let's just cruise through. Yeah, really bad photos, really bad order of photos. What are we doing here? Are we even trying? Oh my gosh, there's 4 photos and they're all really bad.
And they're Nokia photos.
Again. Yeah. So tell us about it. How did this one go?
So this one, again, so one thing that I was really attracted to about this property was the simplicity of the layout. So the first property, it was built in the 1920s, but the lower level was initially the corner store for the neighborhood, and the upper level was kind of the owner's quarters, if you will. So there were just some oddities about the layout that didn't quite make sense. Whereas this property, it was designed as a duplex, and it was 40 years newer. So everything was separate. The basement was separate. There was separate laundry, separate HVAC. It had heating and cooling, central air, essentially. Separate water heater. Everything was separate. It was designed that way. There's actually a lot of room for improvement there. We haven't felt the need to do any improvements. I think in the future we will, after the current tenants move out. They're on a 2-year lease. But it's just a good, solid property in a nice area with a little bit of room for value add on top of that.
Are there any like extra bedroom area or extra den involved in $1,150 per unit with only 2 beds? Can you find another sleeping area in there or not so much?
No, it's just 2 beds.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 bed, 1 bath.
Cool.
Yeah. The bedrooms are really large though. That's always been a selling point.
Yeah. That's a lot of square footage for a 2-bed.
Yeah.
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 Where is it in relation to 35? Is it to the east or the west of 35W?
So it's to the west, east of 35.
East.
East
Yeah.
of 35W.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about 10 blocks east of 35.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, what's around there for amenities and stuff like that?
Sure. Lake Nokomis is nearby.
Okay.
Minnehaha Parkway is nearby.
Okay.
There's a couple restaurants on Chicago, walkable, 2 to 3 blocks north
Okay.
of there. There's a Kowalski's and a couple smaller mom and pop restaurants.
Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen, yep.
Oh, okay.
So the first property that we purchased, if you cross the street, you're in Columbia Heights.
Yeah.
Whereas this property, if you go a couple blocks south, you're in Richfield. So you're kind of on the edge of like the first inner ring suburbs. So it's kind of a quiet, nice neighborhood, large mature trees. And then you've got the proximity to the lakes and then the proximity to 62 and 35W as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fantastic part of town. Any lessons from this one? Or surprises or anything?
No surprises. I would say I have I place a much higher value on properties that are designed to be multifamily properties. The next,
Which influenced your next decision zero.
Yeah. So at the time, I wasn't really thinking about this, but reflecting back on it, this is definitely a priority of mine. I really value properties that are, have separate utilities, have separate systems. Just from a day-to-day management standpoint, I find it easier.
For sure. I agree.
And, maybe you're not going to make as much cash flow or whatever, but I feel like part of the equation for me isn't just the numbers, it's the time that it takes to manage it. If I'm over there all the time and coordinating between multiple tenants for one service, I just don't want to deal with that. So yeah, that's the biggest lesson from that property.
And what are you getting?
Can you explain what you mean there? Because I actually find that the ones with separate utilities cash flow better. So I'm curious of where you're coming from there. Like, what did you experience?
I guess with this property, we've been able to hold on to our tenants for such a long time that we're not like increasing the rent.
Okay.
So I think in the future it will do better, but it's just a solid property where I think from the standpoint of it's boring. So some of our other properties, they weren't designed as multifamily, and they kind of have there's a certain like pizzazz about them, if you will. Like one of the properties has a spiral staircase in it, and it's got different woodwork and like different fireplaces. And I think for some people, having a unique property has a certain pizzazz about it, and some people might like that, whereas this property is a boring property. And I like boring properties now.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you've got like pizzazz or just anything that's not going to compare to an apartment, then that's going to be a draw, right? Like, I think people forget that we're giving someone more of a home feel as opposed to a sterile feel. So maybe that's what you mean by like it attracts people, and you can kind of maybe get a little higher rents in the non-boring properties, but you prefer the boring ones.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
And sometimes like it's definitely not like, I wouldn't say that true duplexes sell for more than chopped up ones. So you could argue that the price to rent ratios maybe, I don't know if this is the case, maybe skew higher with the chopped up weird properties. Certainly like a side-by-side duplex that has like separate water meters even is going to sell for a lot more than its like 1920s counterpart, and probably have a lower price to rent ratio. So that might be correlated, but I don't know. What does it rent for now? I mean, you bought it at $367. I can tell you it's worth about $5 today. I think.
Let me just check here. So the whole building,
or maybe low 500s.
Rents for $42,000 a year. So the lower is $1,700. The upper is $1,850.
Sweet. So moving on, you learned, maybe it's not so much that Chicago taught you that you like boring properties, but this next one taught you.
The next one certainly taught me that.
You like boring properties.
Yeah.
This is where I come into your life, and I help you buy a property that's not your favorite.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one. Let me look this one up.
Sure.
God, I lost what's the house number on that one?
14710, 13th Avenue North.
Yes, of course.
And this is a multifamily?
Multifamily, yep.
Yeah, you probably own the multifamily in Plymouth. Is that it?
That's literally the case. Yep.
Yeah.
I had to run comps for duplexes in Plymouth last week to write an offer. And I had to go back a full 3 years to find a duplex that had sold in Plymouth. And the comp was that duplex that I was writing an offer on.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I said that on the last podcast.
Yeah. That's okay.
That's how rare. It's good to own things that are rare.
Right.
But go on. How'd this one go, Dumi?
Yeah.
How handsome was your agent when you finally jumped ship?
So the first two properties, my son was born in the first property, and we house hacked the other two over a couple of years. And we knew we wanted to move out to the western side of town, be in the Plymouth kind of Maple Grove area. And we felt like we had at least one more house hack in us. So this was our final house hack that we did. So, it's literally the only triplex in Plymouth from what I've learned from the city. So whenever I call into the city, they're like, "Oh, hey, Dumi, how's it going?" Like, so they've been out to this property many times. The house was built in the mid 1960s, I want to say, and a husband and wife initially owned it, and the husband passed away, and the wife was looking to make some additional income. So she converted it, or had some people convert it to a triplex. So there's one unit in the basement and then two in the upstairs. But when you look at the house, it looks like a single family house. It's kind of like a walkout, but backwards. So half of the house is sunken into the ground, into a hill. So, you walk in on the first floor, you've got your garage on the right, and then the largest unit on the left. And then upstairs, you've got two smaller studio style units. This one we did, FHA, we put like 5% down on the property, and it was an opportunity for us to get out into Plymouth. That's initially kind of why we took a jump at the property. It's in a very residential neighborhood. There's no other multifamilies in the neighborhood. We're the only one. And like I said, it doesn't even look like a multifamily. The only reason you would know it's a multifamily is because there's like 8 cars out front. It's either someone who's very rich and has 8 cars, or it's a multifamily. But it's a stone's throw away from the lake. There's a walking trail. Parker's Lake.
Parker's Lake, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you can walk like slightly down the road and then you can see the water.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You're like very close to having a water view.
Exactly. Yep. If you had a good arm, you could hit the lake with a ball. Mm-hmm. And then there's a walking trail nearby. It's a very residential feel. Big, tall, mature trees, which I hate trees now. So I think, when you're looking at the property initially, you're like, oh, I love the trees. I love the grass. I love that it's a nice big lot. But after living there,
a lot with lots of trees means lots of leaves, right?
Exactly.
And sticks and everything else. Yeah.
Yep. So every single year, our lawn care bill for cleaning up the leaves and the sticks is ridiculous. And we had to cut down the tree because it was like rotted out or something like that. And I want to say it was $6,000 to take care of the tree within our first year being there. And this is kind of a side note, but I think one of the benefits of house hacking is because you live in the property, it's not like it's an investment, but your living costs are also subsidized. So, if you're assuming you're, maybe with your partner, if you're both working, it kind of allows you a little bit of leeway to absorb something like a $6,000 tree incident. But without that benefit, $6,000 is going to wipe out your cash flow for a very long time.
Yeah.
But when you're in the property, you can kind of spot issues sooner and take care of them before they become a really big problem, or it allows you to absorb a little bit of that, those cost impacts. So yeah, the learnings from this property, one, I like simple yards, flat square yards with minimal tree coverage and minimal landscaping. I don't want to be, paying someone to weed and paying someone to do a lot of upkeep on plants. I think some plants are nice, but when it's repeated, consistent work, I don't like that.
Hostas.
Yeah.
Hostas are great for yeah. And then just simple mulch, and even that has to get replaced often. So on rental property, just very simple landscaping. You're exactly right. Yeah. I mean, everything you said, dead on. And even still, like, there's like snow removal. Is it in an area where snow removal is difficult for some reason, or it's difficult to get someone else to do it, depending on if you need that or not. So all kinds of little factors to keep in mind.
Right.
Or find a tenant. I've got some awesome tenants at my place on Dayton right now, and they were drawn to being able to garden. That was like a huge selling point for them. And I think maybe somebody moving in to this property in Plymouth, you could incorporate that into a caretaker discount. I'm sure now they're not going to chop down a tree for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've allowed that. Like you can let someone garden as long as it's something where it's not like where you can take it over. Like we prefer a raised garden, right? That's kind of a little preferred and stuff like that if you can do it. But absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and I think a really big selling point about this property is, it's at a lower market rate. Like you're not getting a full house, but you get a lot of the benefits of being in a house. You get the neighborhood feel, you get the proximity to the lake, you get the proximity to the walking trail. We've got an attached garage included, laundry's included. So it gives you that feel of being in a single family without the single family price and the upkeep that's required for that single family.
Is the laundry separate per unit in this one, or is it?
It's shared.
It's shared. Okay.
Yeah. And
where would that be? Is there just a separate basement area kind of thing?
So there's no basement per se. It's a tuck under garage.
Okay.
And just off the garage is a laundry room.
Awesome. Yep. Okay. And it sounds to me, I haven't been to this property or even seen it. Sounds like it's a pretty big lot. Is that fair to say, or not really?
It's pretty large. It's probably
a third of an acre.
3. Okay. Yep.
Okay. And do you have an area in the back, and do people use that? Like, do you have a fire pit or a patio or something where people can hang out and, have a barbecue kind of thing?
Sure. There's a small backyard. People grill out there. Mm-hmm. The front yard is actually larger than the back.
Okay.
The property's set back pretty far from the street. Since you asked about the laundry room, this is one of the odd things about the property. I'll just go through a couple things that are a bit odd about this one. There wasn't a connection for the laundry into a typical waste line that goes into the main line drain and out to the street. So what they did was there was a hole in the side of the house, so you'd wash your clothes, and the washer would dump the water out into a pit in the backyard. And then from there was a sump pump in that pit, so outside in the cold. And then it would, since the house is on a hill, it would take that water from that outdoor pit area, and it would dump it into the neighbor's yard. So there was like a 60-foot long sump pump hose. So
underground?
No.
Above ground?
Above ground. Dumping laundry wastewater into the backyard.
Yeah.
So, in the winter, you would have to run your clothes on hot so that it wouldn't freeze, and the sump pump would have enough time to actually catch up and dump the water in the back.
And this is all because somebody didn't want to jackhammer and properly install a drain. Is there not a laundry tub next to your washer?
Yeah, there's no laundry tub.
Yeah, so they thought this would be easier than just properly.
It was literally a hole in the wall with a little bit of insulation stuffed around it. So it just dump it into a pit in the backyard, and then it would just transport it to the neighbor's yard. I don't think the neighbors knew about this.
Sounds like a handyman special.
Yeah, so that was one of the first projects that I took care of.
So how did you fix it?
So I kind of jerry-rigged a PVC pipe system where I, used the pipe dope and glued the pipes together. And right next door in the garage, there was a drain in the floor. So I bought a one of those circular carbide drill bits and drilled through the block. I went to Home Depot and rented this large drill and drilled through the block, and then ran that pipe through the block into the garage. Luckily, the garage is heated, so I didn't have to worry about freezing in the garage. So I ran it in there. So far, it's been great. There haven't been any issues.
Awesome.
So that was one of the issues. And then another issue is in the lower level, with most properties, you've got your your plumbing stack, and you've got the vent going out the roof, and then you've got the drain lines going into that and heading out the house. This one, there's no vent going out the roof. It vents into a closet. So occasionally, you're like washing your hands and whatnot, and then you go on a trip for the weekend, you'd come back and you'd smell something, and it's like, where is that smell coming from? And it was basically the fumes like wafting into the closet. So far, it's been fine, but it's not up to not what code would be, but it works. So
I remember talking to Inspector Greg after this inspection, and he was definitely just kind of scratching his head when it came to a few things. And I'm kind of wondering, I wonder if they're going to move forward with this or not. And
This is the lady who did it cutting corners, right? I mean, that's what it is. And she was, it's understandable why she did, right? Probably. She felt she needed to do all this to afford the place probably. And so she cut a couple corners, it sounds like.
Right.
But most of these triplexes most triplexes are chopped up properties, right? There weren't a lot of like purpose-built triplexes.
Correct.
But it's to your point, it's a supply and demand thing where like somebody gets to feel like they live in a single family home and it's quite a bit cheaper. If you want a full house like this in Plymouth to rent, I got to think you're well into the 3,000s for most of them. And then if you're only one single person, you're like an older bachelor, an older woman, and you need a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, where else are you going to find something nestled into a nice little neighborhood like this? No, you got to be in a big building across from a McDonald's, and it's loud, and there's all these people in the building and dogs and all sorts of stuff. You don't care about the amenities. So maybe the tenant pool is probably smaller for both of these types of people, but the supply, like you said,
is essentially zero.
You have the only one.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So you rent it pretty easily, would you say? And people like to stay there?
Yeah, so the tenants had just moved out in the lower level unit. They were there, it's either 3 or 4 years. We moved out of that property and then went to our single family. So it's been 3 years. And then they purchased their own single family. So they've been, great tenants, and we've been able to hold on to them for 3 years. And then the upstairs units, the other tenant, he's been there for 3 years as well. And then the property or the unit across the hall, we do medium term for that unit. And all the tenants that have stayed with us are people from out of town. So I don't know if there's something about how it, lists for people coming in from out of town, but
interesting.
All the tenants have been from out of town in the last few years. No one here locally.
I know a lot of us are on a schedule right now, and it is 1:45, but we should get through these next two.
Sure.
Maybe we just won't dwell on them for as long.
Okay.
Let's talk about my favorite property of your...
Kent?
Let's talk about Kent. This place is really sweet. It's in Cathedral Hill, an area near and dear to my heart. Tell me about it, man. Why did you buy? I know why.
What type of property is it?
Go ahead. It's a duplex.
Yeah. Okay. So this property is a duplex, up-down duplex. The upstairs has a loft. So,
So it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It takes up the second and third floor. The reason we bought the property is we were looking to get into medium-term properties. So this was kind of our first medium-term foray into that strategy. At the time we were concerned about, with interest rates being higher, like how are we going to make this cash flow, this property cash flow? So my goal with the next couple of properties was to, make a little bit of cash flow, at least break even, but then layer the medium-term strategy on top of that. So that's worked out really well for us. And I think this property in particular is a very attractive property. Again, I think it has to do with the location. It's in Cathedral Hill. It's a couple blocks north of Summit, and then a block south of Selby, just off of Dale. So it's a very nice walkable neighborhood, very nice mature trees, a lot of very classic homes in the area.
A lot of wealth in that area.
Yep.
And particularly where this one is, if you didn't pick up on this, north of Selby, multifamily is a dime a dozen. West of Dale, multifamily is a dime a dozen. But to be south of Selby and north of Summit and east of Dale and to own multifamily is a pretty special thing. It's a very, very high-end neighborhood. So that's cool.
Yeah, and it's a very high-end property. we typically rent to people that are coming into town for work, or they're relocating in Minnesota for work. So, maybe a company is paying for their relocation, and, this property commands the highest rent out of any of the properties we have. In the summer, anywhere from, 4,500 to 5,500 is what we're getting for each of the units. Again, that's, fully furnished. We're covering all the utilities. And then the property is unique. It was built in the late 1800s. I want to say it's 1890. So it has some of the old charm of that era, where there's a spiral staircase going up to the loft, and there's a lot of classic woodwork on the outside. It's a painted building where it's got wood siding. I think for long-term maintenance, that's probably not the best, but as far as giving it a classic, unique, nostalgic look, I think it lends to that. But then it has a lot of really nice updates. So the bathroom is updated. There's tile flooring and tile surrounds. The lighting is really good, and it pictures really well on the platforms that we use for medium term.
That was going to be my next question. So for medium term, where have you found your most success platform wise, or where do you have it listed?
So Airbnb honestly has been the best avenue for us. We have had some success with Furnish Finder. My personal opinion is that I really like Airbnb because it's set up like it's a one-click type of deal. Whereas Furnish Finder, in my opinion, it's like 80% of the way there compared
to
like
Airbnb. A Zillow lead or something.
Yeah, you just have to do a lot more. You have to have a lease put together, whereas Airbnb, you're just clicking a button. To me, it just feels like it's not quite there.
It's a really clunky platform. Most of the listings on it are not even real listings. Like, I bet if you went on Furnish Finder right now looking for a place, the response rate would be like 50% from owners.
Yeah, well,
maybe it's changed over the years, but that's
I have
what
a place on there, and it's listed that you can only rent it for certain months of the year, and I constantly get requests for months that it's not available, constantly.
Sure.
So I have noticed, by the way, I heard a podcast with the CEO of Furnish Finder on there, who used to be, I think, the CEO of Expedia or something, like a high up exec, and decided he wanted to have an easier life but not get out of it. And I have noticed an extreme increase in leads.
Interesting.
In the last couple months.
Oh, interesting.
On Furnish Finder. So they're doing some sort of marketing now that they were not doing before. But again, I'm getting a lot of people who want to rent a ski condo and for $4,000 a month in January in Keystone, which is like laughable. Right. It's like, pay me $20.
One thing that's a good point about the pricing. I use Price Labs for the pricing.
Yeah.
And that just automates all my pricing. And I have it set up to be a medium term strategy. So it's pricing for the month, whereas Airbnb is compatible with that software, whereas Furnish Finder isn't compatible with that. So what I was doing initially is I was constantly changing the pricing to keep up with the demand. So now how I'm kind of using Furnish Finder and Airbnb jointly is, for the majority of the year, I use Airbnb, and I just use Price Labs to keep up with the pricing. But then what I try to do in the fall and winter months is secure a tenant right away using Furnish Finder at a lower price, just to kind of lock it in and know that, okay, from November until February or March, like I've got someone in the property, and I don't have to worry about the demand during that season. So, I'm starting to update my profile on Furnish Finder and having a slightly lower rate just to get someone in the door and lock them in, and then have them on a lease, but then actually take advantage of the pricing software. Because, Adam and I have had a lot of conversations about this, where it seems like medium-term people book very last minute. So
yeah, he's mentioned that.
Yeah. On Airbnb, I want to take advantage of the fact that, like, hey, there's not a lot of places available, and someone's going to pay, more than they would if, booking something months out. So that's kind of how I'm viewing the the strategy of using Furnish Finder and Airbnb together.
And these are two different units, correct? You said they both are midterms, not just one of them.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So we have 4 midterms and then 8 long terms. Yep.
Okay.
And there will be one less unit you'll have to compete with in the neighborhood starting in a month, because I think I'm going long term with my one.
With that triplex?
I was holding on to one Airbnb for years that's a neighboring property to yours. And a guy, I helped manage his house in Mac Groveland, he reached out to me recently. Hey, my dad's getting booted out of the duplex he's been renting for 25 years. Do you have anything for him? And I'm like, man, I happen to have this very nice 1-bedroom unit. And I threw a price out there, and they're like, yeah, I think that'll work. So I personally I don't quite have the time, or not to say that you have more time than me, but I think I've been doing Airbnb for so long. It's lost a little bit of its luster, and I don't quite have the motivation to run a good Airbnb instead of long-term tenant. You really have to be creative and keep trying things, like you're dialing things in with your winter vacancy. Man, if you can solve the January, February problem with your Airbnb, oh my gosh, you'll make so much money. So I feel like I'm just not on top of my calendar enough. I don't have the energy or motivation to do those creative things. So that's why I'm going long-term with it. But that'll help the market in the neighborhood. So you're welcome.
Oh, thanks.
You owe me now. Anything else about Kent? It was an off-market deal. I had met this guy when I was bartending at La Grolla, because the old restaurant I worked at is blocks from here. So he was like one of the first real estate leads I got in like 2018 probably, and just kind of kept in touch with the guy. We don't have photos of this place for you guys because it was off market and I never put it on the MLS. But it's kind of cool. The owner owns a prominent venue in Minneapolis and is a musician. He's friends with all sorts of like somewhat famous musicians. And so he had guys who would be on tour. If they're not on tour, they'd come and like do renovations for him. So a bunch of like touring musicians did all the work. Cool floor plan. Owner who really cared, like was pretty, I guess I wouldn't say meticulous with everything, as you've probably noticed, but like very hands-on owner is who you bought that place from. And you've done well equity-wise, honestly, just from appreciation, or maybe not like you bought it $100,000 under value, but we could argue that you bought it like 40 to 60 perhaps under value. So
yeah, and honestly, it's been our best performing property. I really like the neighborhood. It has a certain charm about it, and it attracts great people from out of town. So it's a really easy sell on Airbnb. So we really like the property. If
you're gonna wake up in St. Paul in an Airbnb, and you could be anywhere in the Twin Cities, it's like one of the best blocks you could wake up on for sure. All right, moving on to talk about DuPont, and then let's get you out of here, dude.
Sure.
And we can go quickly if you want. This is going to be 3520, correct?
3520.
Yep, I've been doing
DuPont South?
Yep, DuPont Avenue South in Minneapolis.
So uptown area, is that right? What would you call it?
Or is it 5 blocks south? It's uptown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's south uptown. It's 4 blocks south of Lake Street.
Okay.
Or 5 blocks technically.
Okay. And also is it west of what would that be? What's the cross streets?
It's just north of the cemetery. So it's like almost into
Lakewood
East Harriet.
Cemetery.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So this was our first seller finance deal. We bought it in 2023, and I'd been looking into seller financing as a way to figure out a strategy around the interest rates at the time. So I think, Adam, you found it initially, and then we started to negotiate with the seller. We went back and forth a number of times.
Lead from a virtual assistant.
Yep. Turned out to be great. So we did 0% down. Our strategy at the time was, instead of, hey, seller, me giving you the cash, I want to put the cash into the property. So I need, cash to renovate one of the units. So this is a non-conforming duplex. So it's got 3 units in it. There's a basement studio, and then there's a 3-bed, 1 bath on the upper floors. And these are very large, nice units. I want to say you probably have it, Adam, but I think they're 1,800 square feet. They're pretty large.
That's really big, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing these folks didn't measure. They're claiming 14,000 per unit. Or I'm sorry, 1,400 per unit on the MLS. But
those are still pretty big units. Even 1,400 is a large.
It's big. Yeah.
Yeah. And
3,000 finished all day.
Yep. And they're 3-1s, really nice hardwood floors. Kitchens are updated. Bathrooms are updated.
What sort of work did you want to do?
So my current project, it's been a project for a couple of years, is converting the basement unit into a fully standing unit to make it a triplex. So, we have a lot of the necessary requirements there to make it a triplex, but working with the city of Minneapolis has been a little bit tricky as far as, you go from residential building code to commercial building code, and making sure we can comply with those different requirements has been tricky. There's the fireproofing requirements and the ceiling height requirements and exterior egress requirements. So we check a lot of the boxes on this property, but we're not quite there.
Just because it's good for everyone to hear, where is it like lacking for back of order, or where you're not quite there?
Sure. So I don't remember the exact ceiling height requirement, but at residential, I want to say it's 7-foot ceiling height requirement.
Okay.
And I think at commercial, it's 7'6", and we're like right at 7 feet. So it's like, where are we going to get that 6 inches?
6 inches, yeah.
So, one option is we could potentially jackhammer the floor and go down, but then, there's the cost of the jackhammering and laying a new foundation, and now the block on the side of the house isn't resting on a foundation. So it's like, okay, what are you going to do about the block that's got a 6-inch gap there? And then there's the plumbing that's in the floor. So now you got to lower all the plumbing. And
you might have to underpin the foundation depending on what an engineer tells you. Yeah,
exactly. So
that's an expensive 6 inches.
Exactly.
And you need probably 7 because you have to account for your roof, right? You got to put a sheetrock ceiling up, which is at least a 1/2 inch, but we talked about that for code. You're going to need more. And then you've got like some flooring. So you're probably 7 inches, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Right. And then there's, stairwells. The rise and run of a residential property is different than a commercial property. And now we're going to commercial code. So it's like, okay, are the stairs going to meet the code? And, with construction, a lot of times it's dependent on the inspector. So it's like, we don't want to spend the money and, go through all the hoops to try and get it to a point. If an inspector goes out and he's like, yeah, you're 1/2 inch too short. Like, a lot of people are like, okay, that would probably work, but it's a risk that we don't really want to take if we're going to be spending $100,000 to get it up to, a habitable state. In my opinion, it's habitable. It's a great unit. It's probably 600 square feet. It's got a full kitchen, got a bathroom, but it's just hitting those
criteria.
Yeah, those criteria to get it up to code.
Have they indicated that if you meet those, that it's approved? Is there anything else that would stop you other than those two things? I mean, now I'm not saying they're not big reasons, but just kind of curious if they've.
Yeah, the biggest one is the ceiling height clearance. That's probably the trickiest issue. Another issue is how far the staircase is away from the adjacent property line.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I believe it's 12. It has to be 12 feet away from the adjacent property line.
Wow.
But we have 3 staircases in the building.
That must be a commercial thing, I would think. Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it has something to do with the code, or not the code, the zoning of the area.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, that has to be a certain setback from the adjacent property. Another one that's kind of a discrete one is the property has to have a certain amount of parking spaces.
Sure.
We only have 2 parking spaces, but we'd be adding a 3rd unit, or the property has to be a certain distance from a bus stop. And we're like halfway down the block. So it's like, okay, what are they actually going to take a tape measure and measure to the bus stop?
Yeah. Is there a bus stop on the corner?
There is a bus stop on the corner.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just how ridiculous. I just got to riff on this 1 second. How ridiculous is it to have any sort of code where it's an interior staircase, right? Not an exterior one? Or are you talking about exterior?
Exterior.
Okay. So as I say, that has to be 12 feet. I guess that's not as ridiculous. But can you imagine, like, I don't know, do you go around houses and look at, oh my gosh, that staircase is so close to the property? Right.
It doesn't make any sense. In fact, there is like no property, very few properties in that area are even 12 feet apart from each other. Or maybe they're about 12 feet, give or take. So silly.
I've had a couple architects go out there and, you know, kind of start the initial steps of doing drawings. Mm-hmm. You know, two have said duplex is probably your best bet, you know, combining the first floor with the basement. The current one that I'm working with, she's, you know, researching the codes and just seeing what's the feasibility of actually doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I connected Dumi with Brian Noy because I thought he could be a lower cost resource. But you know, maybe the city the city wants to see that stamp of approval from a actual architect.
Yeah.
Well, man, you've given us an hour and 15 minutes. I'm so glad you were able to be here. Is there anything else that you want to leave folks with, or any other like goals or plans? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this, but anything else you want to leave the folks at home with before we depart?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to share. First, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been fun to chat with you guys and kind of go through the history of my real estate journey. You know, I've been a project manager for 10 years in commercial construction in a bunch of different avenues, and we've done our own remodels, live-in flips, if you will, on the units that we've lived in, or the units that we've maybe had a vacancy and we've taken the opportunity to remodel the kitchen and the bathroom. So I've done a number of those. And I've been thinking, okay, what's next for me in real estate? And I think flipping could be an avenue. So I've been, you know, looking at flipping and making contacts with people. And I'd like to combine my love of real estate investing with the experience I have as a project manager. So that's kind of what the path is looking like for me next, and continuing to purchase more small multifamilies is definitely on the docket for me.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I think you'd be fantastic in that realm, and look forward to helping with your success. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
See you, Dumi.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hey, what's going on, Adam?
I'll tell you what's going on, Tim.
Please do.
I secured financing for the hoarder house.
Yeah.
I thought people might find this interesting. So I've never really done anything for my personally, creatively, financing wise, ever. Yeah. I've done owner occupant deals, and I've done 20 or 25% conventional purchases. That's it. I've helped clients do contract for deed, all hard money, all sorts of stuff. But when it comes to, you talk about this sometimes, Tim, about how like you give a lot of good advice to people and then kind of sit back and think like, I could have done that, you know?
Yeah.
And so we just happen to have a couple hard money lenders on the show. This deal gets put in front of me. I could have moved some money around and done this on my own, but I thought I'm going to reach out to a hard money lender. And essentially I wanted to talk a little bit about that experience and then what I ultimately settled at, because I think someone will learn from this, and you can, you know, give us your lending expertise. So this particular lender, I didn't have a relationship with, obviously, because I've never done this before, but I do have a history of being okay at real estate. So he felt comfortable working with me. It was going to be 3.5 points and 13% interest.
Okay.
And I think a lot of these guys give you slightly better deals as time goes on.
Absolutely. I 100% know they do. I mean, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it. I know they do. It doesn't get like amazing necessarily.
Usually not, because the points are really, believe it or not, the points are often where they make their money, because even though they might be charging you, let's say 12% interest, if you only have it for 6 months, that means they're making 6% on their money, or on their money if they have no cost of money. But if they have cost of money, they might make 1% or less on that part of it. So they need points to make it work.
So I secured the hard money funding. It like I got the approval. Well, I guess I didn't get final approval. He didn't run my credit, but we all know I would have gotten approved. I got the loan estimate and I got the thumbs up from a hard money lender. And then I thought, I'm paying $30,000 in financing costs for this one.
Yeah.
Now, here's
Over
why.
how long? A year, 9 months? What were
This
they?
is why it's a double whammy, right? I'm not selling this place. I want to refi. And since a hard money lender would be official, mortgage debt attached to a property, I can't do my cash out refi for
That matters. Oh, at least 6 months.
at least 6 months.
Yeah, currently.
And
I'm working on changing that, but right now that's the best I can do.
So I'm making, $2,800 payments to a hard money lender for 4 extra months after the project is done.
Yeah.
That sucks. And again, not to bash hard money lenders, I'm going to use this person eventually, but I thought, I was thinking about Jordan Moorhead and how when people see you succeeding, they really are eager to help and invest in you. And there's all sorts of people with cash on the sidelines looking for what they would consider a safer play than the stock market, Bitcoin, whatever. They're not going to invest in real estate themselves.
Yeah. And they can use their 401k to do it if they want. Or IRA, actually. Technically, it's IRA.
Well, I just started reaching out to clients that I know are on the wealthier side and saying, hey, I'm looking to raise money for 60 to 90 days on this thing. I'm looking to borrow all of it. And I found a guy who was eager to lend me the purchase and the renovation, 12% interest, no points.
Yep.
And I'm feeling
Which
pretty
I think
awesome
is a
about
good
that.
deal. Yeah.
And I think it's a good deal for him. I'm doing a personal guarantee on this money. So if the house goes up in flames, I'm going to have to sell some stocks and pay this guy his money.
Yeah.
Right. He feels as though it's a safe investment because of that.
Right.
His success is not attached to my success.
But if the house goes up in flames, most likely you still sell it for what you paid because you've also improved it. So you probably are, the risk level is probably $60,000, not 240, right?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a silly example just to say that this guy's going to get paid and he can see, I proved to him that I have the ability to pay. I just don't want to. Well, I've got this other couple deals in the hopper right now, and I can't, when I need a lender to look at me, I can't have my reserves depleted for this deal, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I've never done this before. Kwame, friend of the pod, is writing up a contract for me. If somebody needs something similar, I'd love to plug you in with Kwame. And so I think how we're going to do it, Tim, is he's just going to we're going to have an operating agreement between the two of us. Mm-hmm. There's no official mortgage on the property or anything like that. Yeah. Kwame writes up the agreement. The investor will wire the money to title. I buy the property. He will write the contractor a check when the work is done.
So he's going to fund the renovation.
And he's funding the renovation too.
I mean, what I mean is he's not giving you the cash. He's going to fund the renovations as they go kind of thing.
Well, he can do whatever he wants. We have a
You don't really care. Yeah.
I don't think either of us care at all. Yeah. I think from his perspective, I guess it's less risk to pay the contractor because then
less risk, but more work. But at least things are going on. And so what most lenders, just so anyone knows, if you were going to do a hard money loan, they would typically either go out themselves or send someone out to make sure the work was done. So in this case, your investor could drive to the property and say, okay, I'm satisfied the work is being completed, I'll pay, right? And so that does leave it creates work, but safety. So depending on what someone wants.
Yeah, I called Jordan the other day. I'm like, hey, your investor, did he ever charge you points? He's like, no, we just gave him a good interest rate. He was happy with that. So he's like, just ask for it. And that's what I did.
Contrary to most people's belief, I think you can underpay an interest rate on that too. And here's what I mean by that. How much do you think you'll make typically, like on this deal? Let's not talk high or low. What's the most likely profit that you'll make on this deal in terms of equity? I know you're going to keep it, but let's say you flipped it. Would you make at least 60, 70? Right? Okay. So if you got, let's say 8% from this guy, because you somehow convinced him to give you 8%, he might not want to pick up the phone next time if he has any better reason. And then you would lose $70,000. Or you could pay him an extra 4% over the course of a year, which actually ends up being 2% or less in this case because there's no points for the ability to, he's going to take your call. And next time he might be like, oh, that 12% was fine, but I only had it for 2 months, so really I want points this time. you would still be better off paying that because he answered your call, because the next time you got another 70 grand online, or maybe 40, right? So I just want to caution people, make sure the people you work with that help you make money also make money, or you won't be their priority. And you want them to be like, hell yeah, Adam, what are we doing next, right? You want them to actually call you and say, do you got another deal? Because then you'll go find another deal, and guess what? Their money's already there.
It's a really good point. And I feel like, because I didn't try to negotiate whatsoever. And
I'm not saying you did this in this case. I think 12% is totally fine. I'm just saying, like, some people are like, oh, 12% is too high. I need to make it 8 or 9. And it's like, well, yeah, you'll get that one deal, but you're not going to get lots of deals.
Well, I just threw it out there. I'm like, hey man, I'll pay you 12%, because 12%, I know he's going to see that as a juicy number, and that's what I want. Yeah. And what I ultimately want is the relationship, because with some other larger commercial deals kind of in the hopper right now, we need to raise like 4 times this amount of money in the next 6 months, probably. Yeah. And I just want to hit this out of the park for him, so we can make these other things happen.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm not going to say any personal information, but if you're listening, sir, thank you so much for believing in me.
And please share the podcast so other people can hear it too.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
I'm talking to him, not everyone. No, actually, I do have a request, because I got a call recently. One of our guests, Will Rolfe, recommended the podcast, and one of the listeners contacted me directly about some financing. And frankly, by the time we talked, the deal already didn't make sense to him. It was great. It was a wonderful conversation, and we talked through why, and I encouraged him, like, you need to go through this path more often to find the right deal, But long story short, what I got out of that for anyone listening is he got that because Will directly said, you should listen to this podcast. And this guy is on the road all the time. And so I'm asking everyone here not to just share it on their social, but to actually pick out 2 people in their lives that they think would benefit. And please send this podcast to 2 people and see, maybe they'll subscribe, maybe they won't, but we would really appreciate that. And hopefully the people will too. Yeah.
And the larger the community, and the more just the stronger our ties are within our little TCREI community, it's just going to be better for everyone. I'm doing a partnership with somebody who's in the community now. I'm sure that's happened many times. I'm doing some matchmaking right now between a buyer and a seller who are both in our meetup. So there are ways we're just so much stronger in numbers, and we're stronger if we're interacting together more.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest example I can give is Tyler and Rashad, but there's also, there's others. Lynn and Mary connected well with oh my gosh, you gotta cut a second.
Well, Colin,
what's her name? What you gotta cut this for just a second.
Well, I can talk. Yeah, Colin and Liz are working together. I mean, Liz is working with a ton of my clients with pure maintenance. Obviously, we've met plenty of clients and helped them do deals through the meetup and the podcast. So, yeah. Do we have anything to... I guess we don't exactly know when this is coming out, do we?
No, this is going to be an evergreen show, so it's hard to say when it'll come out.
Well, go to meetup.com and search for Twin Cities Real Estate Investing. Sometimes make sure you're searching for groups rather than events, because if we do an event every month, but it might not have been posted
if it's not
yet.
Posted, yeah.
So make sure you're searching in groups. Thanks again to Shook Rentals for sponsoring. Remember, we have a code, TCREI20 for 20% off. And thanks again also for Network Title for always doing such a great job for our clients.
Yeah. Network Title has somewhere around 9 deals with me right now. And they just do an amazing job. I mean, I never have a title issue with them. They're just so responsive. So I want to encourage everyone to look up to them, even if they're not using us, check them out. And please mention us, because they don't know, right? People don't usually call them. So if you can mention the podcast, if you use them, I would be appreciative.
Yeah, tell your agent, because most of the time title is like an afterthought that your agent sets up. In fact, you check on the buyer rep form, agent will arrange for closing. And so it turns out you do have control over who is your closer. And so speak up. You don't have to use your agent's guy or whatever. So,
yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
That's it for today's show. You can visit the TwinCitiesRealEstateInvesting.com website for show notes, tips, tricks, and other local real estate investing information. Adam and Tim would like to meet with you. To schedule a one-on-one meeting with either Adam or Tim, go to TwinCitiesRealEstateInvesting.com/schedule.